Before I married my French husband here in the Philippines, there was one document that basically controlled our entire wedding timeline, and this was the CCAM, or the Certificat de Capacité à Mariage, from the French embassy. When I first started researching it, there were a bunch of videos, but not really enough experiences from other people. So as I went along, I actually decided to document our step-by-step process, and you can actually find those on my TikTok and Instagram profiles if you're interested in that. So in this video, I'm actually going to be sharing everything about the CCAM application process, what we submitted, the timeline, how long we waited, everything that we paid for, and what comes next. So keep watching. Hi everyone, it's Danny, your digital nomad bestie, currently based here in the Philippines. And I actually recently got married to my French husband, and one of the first things that we knew we needed to get was the CCAM. We knew that we wanted to get married here in the Philippines because I wanted to celebrate this marriage with my family and everybody that we loved, and we know that his family would like to visit us in the Philippines as well, just so they can see and experience the culture and the lifestyle we have here. So the very first thing that we really needed to get was our CCAM from the French embassy in Manila. So first things first, what is a CCAM? CCAM is a Certificat de Capacité à Mariage, and this is basically a piece of paper from the embassy saying that this French citizen is single, he or she is capable to get married, and there's no third party whatsoever in France or in another country. And it's basically just like a background check saying that he or she is free to get married and there are no ties whatsoever. And this is the very first thing that you have to get before you officially can proceed with your marriage here in the Philippines or in any other country. But as for me, I'm talking about my experience here in the Philippines as a Filipina getting married to a French citizen. So please take everything with a grain of salt, and if you guys have any questions, comment them below and I'll do my best to answer them. And before we actually started the process, we had no idea how long the CCAM was going to take. So for a bit of context, even before we got engaged, we knew that we wanted to get married. In October, we got engaged in Tbilisi, in Georgia. But the summer before that, we were actually already in France. I was on a tourist visa. We were visiting my now husband's family, and we attended my sister-in-law's graduation in Paris. And it was just great. We knew that at some point we would like to come back to France and settle there for the long term, but we just didn't know when. So when the opportunity came, we got engaged in Georgia in October. And then we came home that November and we just started to get on with the process. And the very first thing that my husband took with him before he left for France was his copy integral, or his birth certificate. And this is one of the most important documents that you have to submit alongside your CCAM application, because it's his record of birth and it's one of the things that proves that your partner is a French citizen. So it has to be the original, it has to be valid within 3 months, and you have to submit it in your CCAM dossier. And as for the documents that we submitted inside our CCAM dossier, it's actually pretty straightforward. For the French citizen, all you need are these things. As I mentioned, you need his copy integral or birth certificate. Please note that it has to be the copy integral, it has to be valid for 3 months, and it has to be the original with a wet signature of the Mary. It's very important. And you also need to submit a copy of his birth certificate. For us, we submitted a photocopy of his bio page as well as the used pages in his passport, just because my husband and I tend to travel together. We're digital nomads. So it's just to cross-verify all of the countries that we've been to before, and just as a supplementary information. Another thing is the proof of residence. My husband actually submitted his phone bill and a joint relationship letter in French. The joint relationship letter is basically a letter saying how you met, who you are, what your wedding plans are, and all of that. And it actually has to be signed by both partners. In our case, we submitted the joint relationship letter in both English and French, but you don't technically have to. You can just submit it in French and that's completely fine. We're just a little bit extra. And if applicable, a divorce decree or a death certificate of the previous spouse, but that's not really applicable to us because we're both single. And for the Filipino citizen, here are the things that you need to submit. First of all, PSA birth certificate. This has to be apostilled by the DFA. Also has to be valid for less than 3 months. PSA Senomar, or your certificate of no marriage, also has to be apostilled, and it also has to be valid for 3 months. As for my proof of residence, I still live with my mom, so I don't have any bills. But what I did was I submitted my bank statement as a proof of my residence because it has my address. The Filipino spouse also has to submit 2 valid identity documents. So I submitted my driver's license and my passport bio page. And when it comes to my passport, I also submitted the used copies of my passport just so they can also cross-verify that, and also for like my previous Schengen visas, just to say that I've been to France and I've met his family. So yeah, also joint relationship letter, but we already talked about that. And this is optional, but if you're submitting a prenup, it has to be notarized and apostilled. So just keep that in mind. Oh, and before I forget, you do have to submit a cover letter in French, and you just have to briefly explain why you're submitting your CCAM application, who you are, and just list down all the enclosed documents in your dossier just so they have an idea of what they might expect once they look through your documents. It also has to be signed by the French partner just because it's their embassy. And yeah, basically these are the necessary documentations that you have to submit inside your CCAM dossier. These are the most important things, so please don't forget them. And I know that every relationship is different. And if you want to submit more proof of your relationship, that's definitely okay. We actually did this as well. I know that some people include call logs, video chat logs, text screenshots, and even money transmissions. For us, what we did, we included a couple of photos of us from the moment that we met in 2022 up until our engagement in Tbilisi in 2025. And so just different photos of us from different phases of our lives in different countries. And we also included flight tickets and Airbnb bookings just to establish that we do have a shared life together and we've traveled together and that we've known each other from 2022 to 2025. So yeah, that's what we submitted. But of course, to each their own. You should definitely submit what you think could help your case. So these are all the requirements for your CCAM. And now the next part is submitting your application. There are actually 2 ways for you to do this. First is through getting an appointment and submitting your dossier personally at the French Embassy in Manila. But for us, we actually opted for the second option, which is via courier. And the French Embassy actually suggests that you submit through a courier with a valid waybill and tracking number. So these could be FedEx, LBC, DHL, and all those stuff. You can't submit it through Lalamove just because you can't really track it. And the French Embassy actually is pretty strict when it comes to courier types. So for us, we submitted through LBC. It was actually quite affordable. We actually paid around 200 pesos only for it to be sent to the French Embassy in Manila, and it took around 2 days for it to get there just because we submitted it, I think it was a weekend, and then they delivered it that very Monday. So it was actually pretty quick. And yeah, these are the 2 ways that you can submit your CCAM application. And then comes the waiting period. Honestly, this is one of the most nerve-wracking moments in our wedding planning, just because we submitted our complete dossier in December 2025, so it's been complete. And then in January 2026, my husband's Mary in France called him saying that his bands were about to be posted. And then in the very first week of February, my husband's Mary also contacted him saying that the CNO, or the Certificate of No Impediment, has been sent back to the French Embassy in Manila. And so from December, January, and February, we thought that that was enough time, that was enough waiting, because all of the documents has been complete and basically we're just waiting for them to create the CCAM document. But boy, were we wrong. Our timeline ended up being so long just because the embassy actually misplaced our CNO. So by the time that April arrived, we still had no CCAM, which was crazy because we were going to get married in May. And we were just kind of anxious and nerve-wracked and just stressed out. And anyway, my husband actually was bound to come home April 23 from France. And then that very next day, we actually went to the French Embassy in Manila without an appointment because they just wouldn't reply to us. But apparently when we got there, the officer in charge was on leave and the receptionist told us to come back that very Monday. Honestly, the receptionists at the building were really helpful, really friendly, And then we went back that very Monday and we still had no appointment. We just really wanted to get our CCAM at this point because we had been waiting for like 4 months. But yeah, we went to the French embassy. This was April 27 at this point, and an embassy staff actually came down to greet us, to talk to us, well, particularly to talk to my husband. And she was like, I'm gonna check your case, blah blah blah, I'm gonna check everything and see what's taking so long. And so we just left the embassy where we're like, I just really hope that we get an update today, because it's been 4 months and we had no update whatsoever. The very last update that we got was on March 9, I believe, saying that our file was complete and it's still processing. So it's been long overdue at this point. And so on the drive back home on that very same day, April 27, my husband actually got a call from the same lady that we were talking to that same day. And she was like, oh, we can't find your CNO. But then my husband remembered that he got a call from his Mary saying that his CNO has been submitted in early February. It was already late April. So this was a key piece of information, because without that, we would have been panicking, thinking that the Mary didn't really submit the necessary document for us to go through with her wedding. But my husband said that, oh, the Mary submitted this on this date in February, so can you just please check? And so the embassy staff said that they were going to call my husband's Mary and all that. And yeah, they hung up. And a few days later, we actually got an email saying that our CCAM was ready for pickup. Like, it was that easy. But also, like, kind of frustrating, because we could have had it much earlier, but it is what it is. And yeah, we actually got our CCAM on April 29th. This was 4 months after we submitted in December. And we went to the French embassy. We had an appointment at this point, so thank God. And so we met with the officer in charge. He explained to us the CCAM. He explained to us the process. He just mentioned that they were a very small embassy and they were dealing with a lot of stuff. So, you know, just have to be compassionate. And he actually also explained the transcription requirements, what comes next, and how we can get our livret de famille after our wedding. And yeah, this was 4 months later of gathering documents and waiting, and finally seeing that approval really lifted a huge burden off our shoulders, because we were getting married in less than a month, and it just meant that we can finally get our marriage license from my local city hall. So it was just a dream come true. After that, we just went to my local city hall here in the Philippines, and then we got our marriage license. We did our pre-marriage seminar in both the city hall and our pastor, because we were going to have a Christian garden wedding. And yeah, we did get married, and it was actually super fun. And here are some clips from our wedding. But yeah, that's it. That's our CCAM timeline and process. And if you're currently going through the CCAM process, know that you're not alone. I know that it can be really confusing at first. And if you're watching this years from now, just know that information can change. So please always visit the French Embassy's website for the most up-to-date information. And we're actually working on our next step, which is the transcription and getting the livret de famille from the French Embassy here in Manila. So if you'd like to follow along that journey, please don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any other questions, don't forget to comment them below, and I will make sure to answer them as soon as I can. But yeah, happy applying, happy wedding planning, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.